Okay, all
All
yours.
right. Perfect. All right. So we are now being recorded. Welcome, Beady friends. Hello, and thank you so much for joining me today. I can see people are here and writing in on the comments where they're from and whether or not they have used a beading loom of any kind or the Jewel Loom that we are going to be using for our project today. I like to know just kind of off the bat where everyone is joining us from, and then if this is a brand new project for you or if this is kind of old hat and you're just here to get some pointers. So let me introduce myself. My name is Meredith and I work for a company called Beadalon, and another one of our brands is Artistic Wire. We sell a lot of products through Michaels, and I have been honored to be asked to teach a number of classes. So this is now, let's see, this is Jewelry Making 114. So since this is 114, you might think, and correctly so, that we have done a whole bunch of classes before this. So I mentioned very briefly that we are being recorded, and all of the other classes that I have done as part of the Michaels Community Classroom have also been recorded and are available in the archives on the Michaels Community Classroom website. So if you like my style, if you like my project, if you like what we've done here today, when we're done, go head over. There are also tons of amazing projects from other makers across all mediums that you can check out as well. And I've taken a lot of the classes, and it's fantastic. And it is so wonderful for Michaels to offer these opportunities for us to learn for free. These are free classes. So how lucky are we, right? All right, so it looks like we have some new people here, and then some people who have used a loom before. And I'm going to teach the class kind of to all different levels, and hopefully you'll learn a thing or two that you haven't learned before. So joining us in the chat is a new friend. Well, she's not a new friend to me, but she's a new friend to us. Kelly from Beadalon will be answering your questions. So if you have any questions, if you're joining us live, go ahead and put them in the chat, and Kelly will help out by answering those questions again in the chat. And then if there's something that I have totally glossed over or missed for any reason, she'll go ahead and give me a little virtual tap, interrupt me, and make sure that I am staying on track. Additionally, the instructions for today's project have been, I believe they have been emailed from Michaels. Kelly did post them in the chat, but I did learn from watching another person's class that if you are watching me on a cell phone, for whatever reason, you won't be able to see those instructions as the PDF that she posted. However, what Kelly will do is, as I'm going through step by step, she will post each step. So if you're making along with me today, which I would be very excited if you were, you'll be able to follow along as well. So I think that those are all of the announcements, the housekeeping, the everything that we need to go over in the beginning. So Jimena, if you are ready, you can go ahead and take the overhead camera, and we are going to go over all of the materials that we need for our project today. Now there are a lot of them, but don't be daunted. It's an easy project once we get started. So what we'll need for our project today, and let me show really quickly what we're making, right? You saw the picture when you signed up for the class, but it's always more fun to see it live, right? So this is the bracelet. It is a loomed bracelet. In the spirit of Halloween, we're doing Halloween project all during the month of October, and it has an adjustable clasp. So we're going to learn how to make this adjustable clasp at the end, and then we are also, of course, going to learn how to do our looming. And the beads that we're using today are actually double drilled beads. So these are brand new to Michaels. There was a class that they taught it was an earrings project where a representative from Michaels went over all of the different colors and pieces and parts and everything in this line. But today I'm using two colors for our project. I'm using the black from where is my set? From this set here. It comes with black, which you can say I've used already, gray and white. and then the dark purple from this set here, which has kind of a navy, and then the dark purple and a lavender. And there are tons of different colors and different shapes and different sizes. However, the important thing is that these beads have 2 holes. So just really quickly, I'm going to show that nice and close up in the close-up camera. And you can see, can you see the 2 holes right there? So when you are looming with 2-hole beads, there are certain different challenges and certain different things that you, different techniques that you have to use. And that is what I think makes this a really, really fun project. So we already talked about the beads, which I usually do last, but that's okay. Let's talk about our tool that we're going to be using today. So the tool that we'll be using today is the Jewel Loom, and my friend Juliana Avalar actually invented this loom, and I'm going to show you all about the loom, how to set it up, some of the features, some of the benefits, some of the fun things that, some of the reasons why I like using this loom. We are also going to be using some WildFire. Now, if you have taken my classes before, and I know that I do have a lot of people who come in over and over again, and that makes me very, very happy. You know that WildFire is my favorite bead stringing thread of choice. The reason why I love this so much is that it doesn't stretch. It is waterproof. You don't need to condition it. And it is very, very strong and very difficult to pierce with a needle. So all of those things are important when you're doing any bead weaving, but weaving on a loom as well. So we'll need some WildFire. The other material that we're going to be using today is B-Lon. Now, B-Lon is Tex 210 nylon cord. It's actually an upholstery thread, which is kind of interesting, but it's really good. Again, very strong, doesn't stretch, and very, very good for jewelry making. And all of the materials that I'm using in this project are, of course, available at your local Michaels. So we got the Jewel Loom, the B-Lon, the WildFire. We're also going to be using some Hypo cement. This is, or some GS Hypo cement, I should say. And this is just bead stringing glue. So this is what it looks like out of the package. We're going to be using this to do some gluing, and hopefully I'll have some good luck gluing. If you've watched some of my other classes, that's one of the things. It's always like, will the glue work? Will the glue won't work? I think today the glue is going to work. So in terms of tools, we will need a chain nose plier. Any chain nose plier will do. If you have a flat nose plier, that'll be great. A scissors, of course, whenever we're working with thread, scissors, and a really sharp scissors. And then some sort of a cord cutter. This is my WildFire cord cutter. This actually is not available at Michaels. There is a cord cutter that is available at Michaels, but this is the one, you can say that it's mine because it has my name on it, that I use here at home. And of course, a bead mat is always a really good tool to have when you're doing anything, really with any beads at all, but especially with the looming. I find that it's a really nice work surface. And lastly, just for a little fun, I am going to be incorporating these metal beads, and we're actually going to be cutting the loops off. So we will need a cutter of some sort. And this is my cutter that I'm going to be using today. This is what we're going to be gluing onto our bracelet to kind of make for a fun little Halloween extra something. And last but not least, if you know me, you know I love a seed bead. And today we're using size 8 check seed beads from our friends at John Bead. These are also available at Michaels, and just the black color. You can tell I'm using kind of the alternative color palette for Halloween with this nice purple and black. I like that as kind of a fun alternative, spooky, but not kind of the traditional orange and yellow Halloween colors. So I think, is that everything that we need for our materials? I think it is. I think that we're ready to get started with our setup of the loom. So let me move some of these tools aside, give myself a little bit more space to work. with the things that I won't need quite yet off to the side, and then see if I can find them again later on. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the Jewel Loom. I'm going to bump my camera up just a skosh. You can see kind of the mess of my workstation, but also important to be able to see the whole tool, right? So when it comes out of the package, it is a flat loom, but what we're going to do is actually build it into this crescent shape with this nice tension here so that we are actually able to make our project. So in order to do that, the first thing that we need to do is to use the bar that comes in the package to turn this from a flat shape into a crescent shape. Now, there are a couple of ways to do this. The way that I like to demonstrate it is by putting one end down here on my bead mat, and then I'm going to put one end of this bar into the bottom hole, and then I'm just going to bend up the top and slide the bar into the top hole. So let me see if I can do that just one more time so everyone can really see what I'm doing. So I'm going to hook that into the bottom hole and then just brace it. Sometimes I brace it against my belly, but I can also brace it against my workstation and just tuck that right in to the top hole. And then what that does is that gives me a nice shape for my loom. So next step is doing the warp threads. Now there are two important words to know, kind of your vocabulary when you are looming, and that is the warp and the weft. And many people kind of are familiar with these words, but the warp is what goes back to front, top to bottom on your loom. And then your weft is what goes side by side. So what we are going to do is what's called warping the loom. And to do that, we are going to take our B-Lon, and I'm using the black today, not only because I like how it looks with the bead colors, but also because it's easiest to see, I think, when I'm doing the when I'm doing a class. So on the back of the Jewel Loom, you can see there's one little button here and one little button here. And these are kind of the magical holders that, that make everything, they keep everything tight and in place. So I'm gonna come down here just a little bit closer with my camera so we can see what's going on. And I'm just going to tie this on with a square knot. So left over right, and then right over left, and then a nice tight knot, right? This is, I really like this loom because it's very easy to use. There are lots of other looms there, out there on the market, but this is a really good beginner loom, and just really easy to use. That's kind of all there is to it. So up here on the top, you can see all of these different ridges. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull on this side, I'm going to pull the B-Lon through one of those ridges. And I never really count. I just kind of eyeball it to see about where I want it to be. And I'm going to lock it in place. So it kind of locks down in between those two ridges. And then I'm going to pull down to the opposite side. And if you want to be very particular, you can count the different ridges. But again, I just kind of eyeball it. It does not really matter if you're one off one way or the other. You just want to make sure that it's about straight across from one side down to the other. And then I am keeping some good tension. It's not super loose, but it's not so tight that I am pulling anything out of whack. I'm going to turn this over and wrap it around that button on the back. And now, since I am using these very cool 2-hole beads, what I need to do is skip 1, 2, 3, 4 ridges on top and put it through the 5th ridge. So if I were doing a bracelet like this one that I did for class a couple of months ago, I only needed to skip one ridge. However, since I am using these beads, I need to skip 4 ridges. And to do that, I like to just kind of count with my eyes or by pulling this. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. And that's going to give me enough space for my 2 whole beads to nestle in between. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, and then put it in 5. Oops. 1, 2, 3, 4, and put it in 5. And if it slips out because you're reading a comment, you can just go ahead and reposition it in. Okay, so now I'm going to flip this over again, and same thing, wrap it around the button on the back, bring it to the front. And again, loose tension. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Bring it around to the front. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's try that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Around the back. And you can see once you kind of get the swing of it, you don't have to turn your loom over every time, unless of course it makes it easier for you to do. Now, since my design has 4 beads across, I need 5 warp threads. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You always need 1 more warp thread than you have beads because they're being nestled in the spaces. So if it's easier to think of 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces rather than 5 threads, go ahead and think about it like that. But you need as many spaces as 1, 2, 3, 4. You need as many spaces as you have beads in your pattern. And this is going to be my last one. So I'm going to count out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And after you do it a while, you can kind of eyeball it. But it's good to, at least in the very beginning, count them out. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so now I'm going to double check. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces for my 4 beads across, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 threads. Okay, so now what I need to do is I need to tie this off. So what I do is I come back here and I'm going to wrap around that button once, and once for good luck, and then pull out about 4 or so inches. And now I can cut my B-Lon from my spool and set my spool aside because I will be done with my B-Lon. Now I'm keeping pretty good tension on all of this, but there are no death grips necessary in loom work. Are there death grips necessary in any bead work? I'll have to get back to you on that. I don't think death grips are ever necessary. Sometimes maybe. Okay, so I'm going to tuck my tail underneath all of those threads, and I'm just tying a double overhand knot to secure everything into place. I always feel like when I explain this step, it ends up sounding a lot more complicated than it actually is. Really, all I'm doing is I'm tying a double overhand knot. If I can get my double overhand knot in there. This is when, there we go. Usually I do this step against my table, so it's a lot easier, but when I have it up, it can get a little fiddly, but that's okay. And now I just want to double check here. And if I have done any of my counts wrong, you can usually, with a beading awl or with your fingers, kind of finagle your threads back into place. So all is not lost if your counts have been a little bit off, but everything looks good to me. So the last step, and this is a step that sometimes people omit, but it's very important. So you can see here, my tension is pretty good, right? But I want my tension to be even better. And the whole kind of purpose point of the design of the Jewel Loom is that we want to remove this rod. okay? And in order to do that, it's not complicated or hard. You just want to be a little bit careful. I've never had anything fall apart when I've done this step. So what you want to do is you want to hold the loom at the top just to make sure that these threads don't go anywhere, and gently bend it while you release the rod from the loom. So I'm going to put that back in and just show that one more time. Okay, so I'm holding it here. I'm gently bending it. I'm pressing against the rod, and I'm going to pull that out, and you can see now how much tighter that is. And that's what's really going to make for a nice loomed project, is having nice tight warp threads. All right, so now we have our loom warped, right? Not too bad. And if you are joining us a little bit late, keep in mind that we are recording this. So if there's a step that you missed, or you're coming in a little bit after the fact, you'll be able to rewatch after Michael's has the class posted. And they usually post it within, I don't know, 24 to 48 hours. So now what I'm doing is I'm taking my WildFire, and again, this is my favorite bead stringing thread for all of the reasons that I mentioned in the beginning, but it doesn't stretch. And that's really, really important when you're doing bead weaving, is to have thread that doesn't stretch. It's also waterproof. It's really easy to work with. It's very thread-like and very, very strong. So I'm pulling out right now about an arm's length. Those of you who have taken my classes before know that that's how I measure things, in either arm's length or half arm's length, which is about 5 or so feet. I'm 5'3", so an arm's length is a little bit more than 5 feet. And I'm using my scissors to snip that off of the spool. So just a real quick tip on the WildFire is, it can be, because it is so strong, it's a coated stringing material, and it has a braided, it's actually Kevlar underneath, the same stuff that they make bulletproof vests out of, which means that it's really, really strong. So what you want to do is you want to use the sharpest part of your scissors, which is usually all the way up near the joint, and bend it in half and actually pull it against your scissors. That's going to give you a really nice, clean cut at the end of your WildFire. Tip number 2 for working with WildFire, and why you need those chain nose pliers on a bead weaving project, is in order to thread the needle that comes with the Jewel Loom, or the Jewel Loom needle, as it is called, you want to flatten the end of your WildFire. See how I flattened it, and it is flat now, as opposed to the round of the rest of the WildFire. That is going to make it much, much easier to thread your needle. I'm just going to grab my needle from over here. This one was already threaded with a little bit of extra thread. And one of the biggest challenges I find in doing any sort of bead weaving work is threading the needle, or as I like to call it, needling the thread. So what I do is I come all the way up here, and I pinch the very, very end of that WildFire between my 2 fingers, and I just place the needle over the top of that WildFire. I find that it's a lot easier to do it that way than any other way. And part of what makes working on a beading mat so great is I can just park that right there as I am getting ready to attach the WildFire to my loom. So now what I'm doing is I'm taking the whole other end of the WildFire, and I'm going to attach it to the leftmost thread, the leftmost warp thread. Now I'm right-handed. If you are left-handed, you can either try this the same way, or you can try reversing it. I haven't really discovered whether it's better to reverse everything as a lefty, or to keep everything the same rights and lefts. So anyone who's a lefty out there who does loom work, let me know if you reverse everything. And you know, some people just reverse it anyway because they find that it's easier to do. So I have the WildFire attached here, and I've left about 3 or so inches. Again, I'm not great with my exacting of the measurements. It's about 2.5 inches. I'm going to scooch it down just a little bit, give myself a little bit more room, because this space here and this space here is going to end up being, if I can find my example. See, I told everybody I put things to the side and then I can't find them anymore. Is it on my wrist? It's not on my wrist. It's going to end up being what you make the, oh, it fell on the floor. How did that even happen? It's going to be what we end up making our clasp out of. So just for planning ahead's sake. Okay, so to get started, I'm actually going to use some different colors. I'm going to use the lavender and the navy from the set. And because this is a repetitive stitch, I'm gonna cooking show style it, and we're gonna jump ahead after we've done a couple of rows. So you'll definitely, if you're beading along with us, you'll have to step back to finish everything off. So now I have everything on my left side, including my needle. I'm gonna take that needle underneath. So I'm going underneath my loom, and I'm pulling my needle out to the right side. Now, in the beginning, your thread will be long, and that's okay. You just have to be cognizant of the fact that you don't want it to get it all caught on everything in your workspace, which I guarantee I will do many, many times. So here's my pattern. Very easy checkerboard pattern. If you want to do a different pattern, awesome. But I just did a, black, purple pattern to keep it in a nice checkerboard. I thought that it looked really nice just like that. So that's what we're going to do for our pattern here as well. So since we're using the double hole beads, again, there are just a couple of additional steps for each row. However, I like that the double hole beads are so big so that the project actually does work up really, really quickly. So let's see how, oh, that's a good one right there. Okay, so we can see those two holes, right? And the back is, what's the word? Concave. And then the front is flat. So you want to line up the flat fronts next to each other with the holes next to each other as well. And it matters which holes you go through and in which order. Because if you don't go through the holes in the right way, in the right order, then they won't line up correctly on your loom. So the way to line up, and you know that it's a Michael's class because the weed whackers are outside of my window. It happens without fail every Wednesday at 2:30. Okay, so I'm going to come through the top hole. Let me rephrase that. The top holes of all of the beads. So top hole here, top holes here, top holes here, and top holes here. So each of the top holes my needle is going through, and each of the flat sides are on the top. If any of your beads are different from this placement right here, it's not going to work or look right on your Jewel Loom. So now what you can do, now that you know that you have everything strung up correctly, you can breathe a sigh of relief and move everything back into place and move these beads down to the end. So now I'm going to take my index finger of my left hand, because I'm a righty, and I'm going to pop all of those beads in between each of my warp threads. Okay, so let me just show that one more time. I'm going to pop them out and then pop them back in. And that is why it's so important to get this bead distance correct. because you can see since I counted 4 and I went into the fifth row, everything is perfect, right? Everything's lined up, nothing is scrunched, nothing is too wiggly, everything is working out. So now what we're going to do is sandwich these beads on just on that top hole in between, or I should say, yeah, in between these threads. So I'm going to come back through from right to left with my needle. And the Jewel Loom needle is great because it's nice and long. So you can do a lot of loom work, or a lot of loom rows, I should say. And I'm just kind of wiggling it through. It shouldn't be too hard to get the thread or to get the needle back through those beads. A good tip is to guide your needle toward the top of the beads, because you don't want to skip one of these warp threads and have it not be sandwiched, to have it be under, because then your beads will be wiggly. All right, so we have our top row in place, but you can see we don't have our bottom row in place. And what we need to do now is to get that bottom row sandwiched in between the warp threads. So in order to do that, I'm going to poke all of the beads through. Just kind of line them up with my finger. And just like with almost all seed bead projects, the needle wants to find the holes. Really, our job is just to guide it through. So let me take this up nice and tight so you can see what's happening. So my needle is going through the bottom hole of each and every one of those beads, except for the last one because it slipped out. So let me make sure that it is also going through that last one. And with all beading projects, when I break it down and show each step, it seems to take a lot longer than when you're doing it yourself. And I'll take it up to speed and do a couple of rows so you can see that it actually is a pretty fast moving project. So now I have the first half of those bottom holes strung. And now what I need to do is lock those up into place and now sandwich them in between, where I guess it's really sandwich them over and under each of the warp threads. And you can see I'm just gently guiding my needle through. Sometimes I kind of have to wiggle it a little bit to find those holes and then tighten it up. And I feel like, I don't think that you can really over tighten because the square beads are a finite shape. So you can't really over tighten in this particular design. If there were kind of wacky or weird holes, or if they were not holes, sides, or if they were rounder, you might be able to over tighten, but this is a nice project to not be able to over tighten. So we've done our first row. The next and all subsequent additional rows are done the exact same way. So you want to make sure, and I tend to do this step without thinking. My needle is on my left. I'm going to put it underneath so that it is now all the way over on the right. And I'm going to start all the way at the very beginning, but I'm going to alternate. So the first time I started with a navy bead, now I'm going to start with a lavender bead. And again, I'm lining up those beads so that the holes are, just trying to show, up and down next to each other in a row. And each of my flat sides are together. So you can see this is not the flat side, that's the back side of the bead. I want to flip that over so it's the top side. I had been really daunted by using double hole beads on the Jewel Loom until I started playing around with them and realized that A, I love how they look, and B, once you know how to do it, like all things, right, it's actually not so hard. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to pick up my beads through that, again, through that top hole. I'm not going through the bottom hole. I'm going through the top hole. And sometimes it's easier for me to pick up the beads. It just kind of depends on what mood I'm in or how how I'm feeling, how over caffeinated or under caffeinated I am, right? I feel like that's how I spend my entire life, either over caffeinated or under caffeinated. There is no in between. That's always what I'm striving for. All right, let me move this back in here. Okay, so I've got my 4 beads on, and I'm going to come in here and I'm going to pop them through the thread and sandwich them by gently wiggling my needle through. And I want to make sure that that needle is coming over the warp thread on the left, because really all we're doing in looming is sandwiching our beads over and under, I guess in between our warp threads, and that's what keeps them in place, and that's what makes the design. So I'm going to flip these all down so that they are, it's helpful if they're next to each other enough, and come back through here because I need to reposition my needle so that I can get the next pass through. And you can kind of see, sometimes it comes out, you just kind of have to wiggle it and guide it into place. It wants to go the right way. We just have to coax it and allow it to go the right way. And apologies, when I start getting down super close to my work, I do tend to knock into my camera more often than is not annoying. So apologies for that, but I feel like it's a small price to pay to be able to really see what's going on. So now I'm just gonna, I bopped those beads back up into place, and I'm just gonna go back through the other side. I'm going to do one more row here up to speed so you can really see kind of how the flow of it goes. And then we're going to get to the finishing. Now, for everyone who might have joined a little bit late, I am really curious if this is your first beading project or first looming project, or if it is something that you have done many times before, and if you have used the Jewel Loom that I'm using today, or if you have a different loom that you've used. So for everyone who is joining us today, if you wouldn't mind taking a moment in the comments, I'm always curious what people are beading with, you know, what tools you're using, what are your favorite tools, what have you used before, kind of what brought you into class today, because that really helps us figure out if we're spot on with the classes that we're teaching, or if we have to kind of reevaluate and think, oh goodness, maybe people aren't getting the Jewel Loom, or everybody already knows how to use it already. It's good for me to be able to figure it out. And this guy is having a little bit of trouble wanting to go where I want it to go. So there we go. See, sometimes it just takes a little bit of coaxing, and also doing it so that you can see it. And the great thing about the Jewel Loom from Michaels is that it comes with a Jewel Loom needle, but if you have other needles that you like better, you can use those as well. You can use a size 12 embroidery needle. You can use I don't know, a size 10, like any needle that works for you, I say will work with the Jewel Loom. You can also purchase replacement needles separately. So I'm always misplacing my needles. I actually just ordered from our stock a 50-pack of the collapsible eye needles, because I've been using those in all of my projects, and every time I go to grab one, they're not there anymore. I don't know. There's like a needle fairy, or the opposite of a fairy, a needle goblin in my workshop, who comes and takes all of my needles for me, or from me, I should say. But I'm thinking that the 50-pack that I just ordered will probably do well for me for at least a couple months. You guys can check back with me and see how long it takes me to lose all 50 of those needles. But yeah, so if something does happen to your Jewel Loom needle, replacements are available. But you can also substitute, I think a size 12 needle or a size 10, but a longer needle, especially for looming, is always better. You could use an embroidery needle, or no, not an embroidery needle. Those are usually smaller. Okay, so we did 4 rows here, and this even would be really fun as a pendant or as maybe for earrings, or there are really cool glue-in bezels that you could use this for, or you could keep going until it was the length that you wanted it to be. Now this one, I used all of the purples and blacks, less I believe 3 that that come in the pack, and it gives me about 4.5 inches, which is perfect for me for an adjustable size. I feel like there are a couple rows that are missing, but that's what happens when you're making a lot of different samples. So we're gonna go with this. Usually I like I like to have a little bit of the adjustability here, so I don't make my bracelets so that they come together. You can see on these adjustable ones are a little bit of a different style, but if you want yours to be a little bit more, you can make it as long as you need for your wrist. Different people have different size wrists, and different people have different sized sizes that they like their bracelets to be. So I have come here to my end, and again, once you are finished with your design, you can go and watch the replay of this project as many times as you want in order to get to where we are right here. So what I'm doing now is I'm just going to carefully weave my needle and my thread back through the beads a couple of times, and then tie it off. I am not opposed to making a knot in my loom work, or really in any of my bead work. I shouldn't say a lot, many. There are beaders out there who never tie knots. I am not one of those beaders, but I have tremendous respect for the beaders who do not make knots. It's just, I feel like I never trust if a knot is not made. Get it? Not. And then I'm going to come here and I'm just going to tie in between here so it's nice and tight and hidden. I can get my needle in between. So what happens when you have such a nice tight warp. Bear with me for 1 second. Let me do it up here just to make it a little bit easier. Just an overhand knot, easy peasy. And maybe do that twice just for a little added extra security. And then I am going to use my, I'm going to use my cord cutter. If you don't have a cord cutter, you could use some scissors. That's totally fine. Or if you're feeling very ambitious, a lighter. But let's see how the batteries are doing in my WildFire cord cutter these days, if they're still working. Oh, they work. Okay, so what the WildFire cord cutter does is it cuts it and then it kind of seals it. It seals the end so that it's not going anywhere. And a good question just came through on the comments for our live viewers, which is what happens if you run out of beading thread? And I actually did that on this piece that I was working on. I wasn't really paying great attention, and the first strand of WildFire was a little shorter. Really, for a project like this, all you need to do is here, and I will show very quickly over here. You have your one thread, cut that. I've run out of my thread. All you need to do is add another thread by tying a surgeon's knot right over left, left over right once, and twice, to pull these two together. Use your WildFire cord cutter to trim off the ends. And then the holes in these beads are big enough that you can just keep going. And this knot will slide into your beads, and then it'll just be like nothing ever happened. And you can trim off the ends whenever you need to. So it's really, really easy to add extra thread. Okay, so now we are ready. This is always the exciting and nerve-wracking part for me, because we are ready to take our piece off of the beading loom. So first things first, I'm going to put my cap back on my WildFire. Safety first with the WildFire cord cutter. And also I'm going to put my needle back over, so maybe I won't lose that one. Doubtful, but maybe. Okay, so when we warped our Jewel Loom, we did it with a lot of tension, right? There's a lot of tension here, which is the whole point for looming. You want to have that tension so that your piece comes in and it's nice and tight and well put together, well orchestrated. But now we need to cut it off of the Jewel Loom. So to do this, you want to maximize the amount of thread you have to work with for your final sliding clasp. So what I like to do is I turn it over, and I'm going to cut the B-Lon as close to this button as I can get it. Okay, so, and the reason why I have it down on my work table and I'm holding it with my hand is when that tension releases, it's going to snap back a little bit. Not so much that it's going to hurt anybody, but I just want everyone to be aware that since I've released all of the tension, everything is a little, it's going to snap back. That's what happens when you release the tension, right? Okay, so I just cut everything off, and now I have this really fun palette for finishing. So the way that I like to finish this, and it's so super easy, on each one of these 5 warp threads, I'm going to thread on 5 size 8 seed beads. And if you want to do 11s, you can do 11s. If you want to do 6s, you can do 6s. It's kind of up to you and what is in your beading stash. I happen to have these size 8 check seed beads from my friends at John Bead, purchased at Michael's. And of any of the seed beads that I have, I feel like these black size 8s are the ones, maybe with the exception of silver color, those are the ones that I reach for the most. Okay, so did I skip ahead? I did skip ahead. Okay, yep, that's okay. I'm taking the prerogative to skip ahead before we do our gluing. We're going to do our gluing as our last step. So the great thing about the B-Lon is that you don't need a needle to get a size 8 seed bead onto it. If you want to, you can certainly use a collapsible eye needle. And I happen to have one right here, collapsible eye needle. Sometimes it can be easier to pick up beads this way, but if you're like me, the running theme of our class today is Meredith never seems to have needles at the ready. I'm working on that though, I'm working on it. If you have needles at the ready, go ahead and use them. It does make it a little bit quicker to do this job. But if you don't, the great thing about the B-Lon cord is that you don't need a needle to get the beads onto it. Are we in frame? Let's move that up just a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead, and you want to be careful. You see how I have my piece down on my workstation, and I'm not pulling it up for anything or for any reason. That is for several reasons. The first is because these threads up here, nothing is really holding them together. So if I wanted to, I could pull this all the way out and then my piece would fall apart. Secondly, I don't want these beads that I am putting on here to go anywhere. So I find that if I just work kind of in a small space and don't move my piece around, I can get away with not having to tie any knots right now or use any bead stoppers or anything that that is going to make my piece fall apart. I mean, it's not going to fall apart, but these beads could, you know, they could come off. Is it the end of the world? No, but do I want to have to restring them after I've done them? No. All right, so 5 beads, and if you want to do 6, do 6. I just like the way that the 5 work to all come together. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just tying a really simple overhand knot with all 5 of these in place. So this is a pretty introductory level project for using the bead loom with these double hole beads. There are many other ways of finishing off beadwork. There are also easier ways to tie knots. So I am just going to come in here with my chain nose pliers and pull all of these threads through to make my life a little bit easier. And then if I'm having a little bit of a challenge getting this up as tight as I want it to be, that's when I like to come in with my beading awl and put my beading awl through that knot, and that can sometimes help me get everything nice and tight. Just kind of finagle this with my fingers, maybe use a little bit of tools, maybe not get it quite as tight as I would normally in the interest of time, but you can see I've got a nice overhand knot going right there. Okay, and I'm going to do that very same thing on the other side, and you can see these are still looped, so I'm just going to come with my scissors and snip them apart very quickly and go ahead and thread up my 5 seed beads on each side. And hope that I have enough room there. I think I will. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now in traditional, this is I would say a non-traditional way of finishing off a loomed project. Traditionally, what you would do is weave all of these little ends back, zigzag, zigzag, zigzag through your beadwork to hide them, and then use the piece of loom work as a finished product for something. So either adding a sliding clasp on or a different kind of clasp or using it as a tapestry. But I have no patience for warping for weaving my work threads back in. So that's why I like to do an adjustable bracelet. Additionally, I have found that I make almost all of my bracelets adjustable because different people, as I had mentioned, have different size wrists, right? And different people have different ways that they like to wear their jewelry. I like my bracelets to be really tight against my wrists. I never want it to go any further down than the what is this, the bone on my wrist. But other people like them really bangly and dangly, right? So instead of trying to determine which way somebody wants to wear their bracelet, I make it adjustable so that they can decide for themselves. All right, so I have a little bit of extra room on this side to make my knot. So hopefully it'll be a little bit easier to make. I'm going to pull that back up. And again, just really simple, easy peasy overhand knot. I'm going to slide in here with my awl again. I think that this one will work a little bit better to get that all nice and tight. Yeah, it's not the tightest knot I've ever done, but it should be good. And so now you can figure a whole bunch of different ways to finish this off. The way that I decided to do this one, and it's a little bit different than the other loom. If you wanted to see how I did this with the twist, I believe August 31st was the date of my class. And you can go back and find that on the Michaels YouTube page. Here, all I did is a 5-strand braid. So I'm just going to braid this down 5 strands. So it's just like doing a regular braid, right? Just like you're braiding your hair or braiding your daughter's or your granddaughter's hair. But instead of doing 3 strands, I'm doing 5 strands. So I'm just taking the back of, or the top one here and bringing it over and doing that same thing all the way down. So as I am doing this, and this is probably the longest part of the whole class, but I think always super fun to do. And you could, gosh, you could do so many different ways, as I had mentioned, of finishing this off. You can make your loom piece a little bit longer. You would need 2 packs of the beads or another color, or gosh, there's so many different things. This is another piece that I been working on, that's just 3 beads across, and because it's 3 beads across, I'll be able to make it a little bit longer. There are all kinds of clasps that are available that you can use, or you can also use a regular clasp. You could tie this B-Lon thread onto a toggle clasp if toggle clasps are your favorite. I also love the idea of doing using loomed pieces as focal pieces in a necklace. So think about, you would finish one side one way and one side another way. And then, you could add tassels, you could, let's see, what else could you do? You could do beads, you could do all different kinds of things. So these squares are, let's see, does it tell us on the packaging how big they are? They are 8.1 millimeters by 7.5 millimeters. They seem more square to me and more even than not even. I would say that they were square rather than, I guess it's just like a 10th or 100th of a millimeter off. They are brand new to Michaels. So Michaels just did a big, what they call a reset of their beading aisle. I don't know if anybody has noticed all of the new amazing things that are there. I actually chased down the manager in my Michaels. I probably shouldn't say that, but I did. I chased down the manager in my Michaels for him to find these beads for me. He had to go to the back to take them out of inventory so that I could do this project, because I knew that that people would be very excited, but might not necessarily know really what to do with 2-hole beads. There are other 2-hole beads out in the market that you could do a very similar project with. And that is all I can say about that. Hopefully I'm reaching the ends of my 5-strand braid. So to determine the size of the bracelet, there are a couple of ways that I do that. So I like I said, making it adjustable, because then you don't really have to worry about the exact size. So I like to make my middle size about, anywhere between 5 and 6, maybe 6.5 inches. because if you have a 7-inch or a 7.5-inch wrist, you want to have enough space for the adjustable knot of your clasp. Okay, so we're going to pretend that I did this all the way down, and I am going to go ahead and tie this in, and again, an overhand knot. We're not doing anything fancy. We're not, you know, worrying about any fancy knots, just tying it in an overhand knot. And then we're going to go ahead and do that same thing on the other side. So we're going to go ahead and just tie that, do that whole braid all the way down. But in the interest of time, we are going to pretend that I have done that braid all the way down, and I'm just going to tie an overhand knot in the end. Just bear with me for 1 second. My knot got a little bit away from me, because I want to show the funnest part of this whole project is making the adjustable clasp, right? Because now we just have a line. We don't have a bracelet. We've got to turn this into bracelet. And as soon as I can get this knot together, we will be able to do that. And I'm just going to come in again with my chain nose pliers, because when my knots don't work out in a way that makes me happy, that's how we have to do it, right? Got all kinds of tricks up my sleeve. Okay, now, in all fairness, this is a little shorter than I necessarily would have liked. I wasn't paying the best of all possible attentions, and what I would have done is done a little bit of finagling and adjusting before I got to this part to give myself a little bit of extra room here. That's what happens when you're talking your way through a class. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my bracelet into a bracelet shape, right? Instead of being a flat shape, we're going to put this into a bracelet shape. And now I need one more piece of my B-Lon. And if you don't have B-Lon, you could use any kind of nylon cord for this project. You can even do your warps with WildFire. It's a little hard to do this adjustable section with the WildFire. It's just not quite thick enough to be able to really work and slide and adjust the way that I like it to be. But I have a piece of WildFire. It's about 10 to 12, I'm sorry, another piece of B-Lon, about 10 to 12 inches. Again, I just kind of eyeball it. And now what I'm going to do is tie some square knots. This is, if you're familiar with macrame, this will be very familiar looking. It is a macrame knot. So the first thing that we need to do is slide this underneath and make those beads stay the way that we want them to, because they are square and bulky. They're going to want to tip over, but we're just going to show those beads where we want them to be. And I have my B-Lon slid underneath those two the two ends going in the opposite direction. I'm just going to tie an overhand knot. Again, all of the knots that we're using today are just overhand or square knots. So one knot overhand, just like that. Okay. So now what we're going to do is the ever famous macrame knot. And if you want to see a couple of other projects that I've done with this knot, again, go back into the archives, because there are some great projects that not only I, but other makers have done for Michaels. So now we're going to do our macrame knot. So very simply, we're going to make either a P or a square or a triangle or a sail over here on my right-hand side. I'm coming underneath everything and back through that space and tightening everything up. And you can see I'm using contrasting colors so that you can see, and you can use contrasting colors, or you could use, in the case that I did over here, the same color, but it's a lot easier to see if I use contrasting colors. So now I'm going to come over here on my left-hand side, and I am going to do that same thing. I'm going to make a loop, a P or a Q, backwards P, and I'm going to come with this side of the thread underneath everything and through that hole. And I'm going to continue alternating sides, left side, right side, until my macrame section is as big as I want. I usually do about 10 knots, but it kind of depends on how I'm feeling, how everything has worked out. And then after you have the knots, as many knots as you want, that is when you can come in one more time with the WildFire cord cutter. Back up just a skosh and snip this off, or burn this off, I should say. We're not snipping anything. And then I kind of it's almost like I'm painting it, just to melt that cord into itself. So that it's not going to go anywhere. And that's the great thing about using this material, is because it's nylon, it will melt against itself. You can't really do this with cotton, because having learned from experience, if you do it with cotton or with a natural, not synthetic material, it will go up in flames. It's not pretty, and it does not smell good. And don't do it in an office full of people either. Yeah. Okay, so last step, very quickly, we're going to add these really fun metal silver spider print beads. There's the part number right there. And the part numbers are also in the instructions. But instead of using them as beads, I'm going to turn them into really cabochons, I guess, or little things to glue onto, just by cutting with a really good sharp flush cutters. I've cut the sides off, and if you want, you can come in with a file and just file it down if it's a little rougher than you would like it to be. And there's a set of files available at Michael's as well, but just real gentle. And of course, when you file, always in one direction. You don't want to saw it back and forth, just always in one direction until that's nice and smooth. And then last step, we're going to use our GS Hypo cement. And if you learn nothing else from our class today, is the best way of using the GS Hypo cement. You never want to squeeze this. I learned this tip much later in life, and it was kind of a game changer for me. What you want to do is you want to hold it in your hand and let the warmth from your hand allow that glue to start flowing out this tip. You can see the tip is super, super small and fine, which is what makes this GS Hypo cement so great, is that you can do some really, really specific and intricate work with it, but you don't ever want to push down on this, because what will end up happening is that the glue will just start oozing out, and then it's never good. Okay, so again, I'm letting the warmth of my hand allow the glue to start flowing, and I'm just putting a generous amount here on the back, not too goopy. And this takes a little while to set up. And you also always want to be really careful to get that pin back in. And if you've done it well and not, done the oozy outy part, it should go back very easily. All right, so now I'm just going to come here and press my spider onto the bead and allow it to dry. And I can do that as many or as few times as I want it to be. And I'm kind of holding it up so that it just has that one bead that it's being glued to, and I could have put the glue down here too, it just really doesn't matter, but I don't want that spider to be glued to the other beads. I just want it to be glued to this one bead. The Hypo cement is glue intended for non-porous surfaces. I wish that I had brushed up on all of my glue knowledge before class. There are other glues that you could use if you don't have the GS Hypo. You could use Beadalon bead stringing glue. You could use the Bead Fix gel would be a great glue to use for this. E6000 would be a good glue as well. Super glue would be a good glue as well. You just need a glue that's going to bond metal to metal. Because this is a metal bead and these are metal beads as well. So this is not dry, so we're going to hope that it doesn't fall off as I'm showing my finished product. But the last thing that we should do before we go to finishing is snip off my ends, right? I have a tendency to leave my ends unsnipped. I get so excited that I'm finally at the end of the project and I don't snip my ends. But you can see now that this is a nice adjustable clasp that you can make as big or as small as you want it to be. And before we finish everything up, I'm going to take my original example and put it onto my wrist so everyone can see how it ends up looking. And it's nice, it's fun because it's a nice kind of substantial design. And once again, I like my bracelets to be a little bit tighter. So with my adjustable ability, I can do that. But if you want it to be looser, you can pull that back as well. And I always, to do my adjustable bracelets, I kind of hold this on here and pull that like that. And I did have a request, just these are the other bracelets that I'm wearing that are in the same, it's the same type of closure. These are adjustable as well. It's just a really simple one strand design. And maybe if people are interested, I'll do that as a class as well. It really could not be easier to do that. But I think we're done. I think we're ready to come to the front again. Yeah, there we go. And there I am. Awesome. So thank you everybody so very much for joining me for our class today to make this really fun, kind of spooky, but not really so spooky, adjustable bracelet using the new 2-hold craft beads from Michaels. Once again, my name is Meredith. I work for Beadalon and Artistic Wire, and I'm just so grateful for everybody for joining me and for sticking with me. Today was a little bit of a longer class than usual, but we had a lot to go over, so I appreciate it. You can find me again at 2 p.m. Eastern Time on Wednesdays through the end of the year and probably into 2021 as well. And if you're interested in finding out more about Beadalon, you can find us on all of the socials, of course. And if you do make this project, be sure to post it and hashtag make it with Michaels and also hashtag make it with Beadalon. I don't know, I got a kick out of the hashtag, so I appreciate it. Super, thank you all so very much for joining me. And until next time, happy beading.